I printed the Tribbiani Traveler pattern at 87%, the small size bag. So it's pages 11 through 14. And I'll put up on the screen the print settings. Just open it in Adobe Acrobat Reader, and then make sure in the percentage box you put 87%. The reason I chose 87 is because I wanted my finished bag to be about 10 inches wide. So I looked at the finished measurements of the small size bag and then took the measurements that I wanted, 10 inches, divided that by the length of the small bag, which is 11 and a half. So 10 divided by 11 and a half gave me 87%. So I'm using a vinyl fabric for the exterior, and then I'm using a waterproof canvas for the lining. So the nice thing about using these materials is that you don't really need to interface them. I'm not using, this vinyl's pretty, I don't want to say stiff, it's not stiff, but I don't know, it's sturdy. So I think it'll be fine with no interfacing, especially with the waterproof canvas as the lining. So we're going to give that a try. I did add, these are the diamond strap anchors from Emmeline bags, and I did add a piece of Decoville heavy interfacing to the back, and that strip was 1.5 inches wide by 8.5 inches long, and then I just fused it to the back right behind where my connector placement was. All right, in order to place my connectors, if you go onto the Emmeline Bags website and the listing for these diamond strap anchors, she has a template that you can print out to use for deciding the placement. What I did, it has a center mark. I cut that in half at the center mark, and then I cut 3/8 inches off of the center of each side, and then taped them back together. And then I placed it 1/2 inch down from the top edge and centered, and marked my placement for the diamond connectors. And then I just installed those. You leave the plastic film on until you're done, and it protects the finish. And then I went ahead and I added embroidery. So this design is an applique design from offwiththeirthreads.com. I will link all of the stuff in the comments. So I did an applique of that one, and then this design is a freestanding design from Nosy Pepper Patterns, and I went ahead and turned it into a patch and kind of did it like applique right on the exterior. And then this vinyl is a custom order that will be up at soweird.com. So let's see what else. Should be everything. I am excluding, since I'm using the diamond strap connectors, we don't have any regular handle connectors as the pattern calls for, and I'm skipping the side connectors because I just want this bag to have handles. And then I also shy on having enough vinyl to do regular 1 inch wide handles. So what I'm doing is double-sided. So it'll be this on the outside, and then this sparkly white glitter vinyl for the inside that matches both of my embroidery designs. So that's everything, and I think we'll get started. The additional things that I cut, or the other things that I changed the sizes of. So I cut my straps 15 inches long by 2 inches wide, and I just want them to be short for my handle, or for my hands to hold. The pocket, interior zipper pocket pieces, I cut 9.5 inches wide by 7 inches tall, and I just still want that pocket to be as big as we possibly can make it to be able to turn all of this vinyl through the pocket. Oh, and then those Peltex strips were 8.5 inches by 1.5 inches. All right, so, oh, and these zippers, And these custom, I think they're custom, zipper pulls are from mormino.com. Her zipper by the yard, she sells in bundles. So that's where I got this. And then these were some of her zippers. So I put 2 zipper pulls on to make it a double pull zipper. So let me move all of this out of the way for now. All right, and I need one of my lining main panels and my interior zipper pocket panels. We'll use a lighter purple for the zipper because I didn't get one ready ahead of time. So first we want to, on the wrong side of one of the interior zipper pocket panels, draw a line that is 1 inch down from the top and starts 1 inch in from each side. So this pocket panel was 9.5 inches wide, so your line will be 7.5 inches long. All right, and then 1/2 inch below that line, go ahead and draw another line, and then connect them. All right, and then I made this, so I should be able to, I'm going to press these pieces in half to find the centers. All right, and then I'm just going to line this up with the bottom of the lining main panel and centered. All right, and then I'm going to pin that in place. Okay, now we want to sew directly along this line around the box using a shorter stitch length. So I'm going to use a stitch length of 3, and I'm just sewing directly over the lines for the box that I marked. And the needle I have on here, I think, is a 16, which actually I might change that out because I like to put in a new needle before a project, and especially something that's all vinyl. Oh, and I just used a Dritz chalk pencil to mark on that. It works pretty well. The chalk lead type stuff inside seems to kind of break pretty easy on this, so I did just order some like metallic marking pens from mormino.com to try out, so we'll see if that's better. Okay. Trim all my threads. Remove these pins. So now we're going to mark directly down the center of the box that we just sewed, and I'm stopping 1/2 inch from each end of the box, and then from the end of that line to each of the corners I'll draw another line. Be careful not to stitch through your, or not to cut through your stitching. So we're just going to cut right now through all the layers. Well, I guess it's both of the layers because it's only the main panel and the lining, or the interior zipper pocket panel and the lining main panel. And this is a little bit trickier, I think, when you use waterproof canvas. I still iron it, but from the wrong side. So I think, I mean, I have never ironed on the coated side. The one side of it's coated. I think that would melt to your iron, so don't do that. But I'm going to press this through the hole and press it flat to the wrong side. Alright, so I completely pressed that pocket flat to the wrong side. So now the interior zipper pocket is wrong sides together with the lining main panel. I stuck a couple pins in here because pressing it does not really hold it that well. So now I have my zipper. I'm going to, it's been a while since I've sewn with waterproof canvas. It's not something I call for in my patterns, so I don't use it often anymore. And it really is, I like it. I like the finish that your bag has and kind of gives it a, like, I don't know, a nice weight, if that makes sense. And obviously I love not interfacing. So I'm just doing what I normally would do with my glue stick. And then let me line the zipper up in the opening. And then check it from the right side to make sure it's centered and fix it. We'll use a stitch length of 4.5 probably for this. I'm going to gently slide this over under the presser foot to try to keep my zipper in place. The glue will hold it, kind of, but it's not, you know, permanent thing, and you can knock it off easily, so. Alright, so I'm just going to back stitch a couple stitches. And then stitch all the way around the zipper. When you get to the end, pivot to turn with your needle in the down position. Pivot there, stitch down just past that corner, and then back to where we started, and then back stitch a few stitches there. Okay, so at this point I can take these pins out. I'm going to trim my threads on the back side. All right, I am going to leave that zipper long for right now. I'll trim it off with the seam allowance here. So I'm just matching up the other interior zipper pocket right sides together with the one that we just attached to the bag. And then I'll clip these together around both sides and the top. Alright, and then I'm going to, from the right side, fold the lining main panel back out of the way. Put this back to my 3mm, I guess it is, stitch length. Alright, and then I'm just using a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. For the other seam allowances on the bag, you really want to also decrease those by the same percentage as you printed. So since we printed at 87%, what we want to do is decrease the seam allowance also to 87%, which we use a 1/2 inch seam allowance in most instances, and that makes it slightly bigger than 3/8 of an inch still. So I will choose, you know, I'll just kind of eyeball something between 1/2 inch and 3/8 of an inch. And that will be the seam allowance I use. But I do want to make sure I use slightly less than 1/2 inch. So. Alright, now we left the bottom open and made sure to backstitch. And now I'm just trimming these seam allowances down to about 1/4 of an inch. And I'll trim off the ends of the zipper as well. That takes us through step number 6. And now we want to use our main panel pattern piece to mark the stitch lines on the wrong side. I already marked my exteriors when I was deciding on my handle placement, so I only need to mark the linings now. So what I did is just on my pattern piece, I just trimmed that part back with a craft knife, X-Acto knife, and then just mark that, and that just makes sure that each of the 4 corners, I guess, where the bag comes together are all even. And this is on the wrong side. So I really made that zipper pocket just as absolutely as wide as it could be. Okay. So now we are going to attach the zipper. So with our exterior main panel right side up, we're going to place the zipper right side down and line it up. All right, and here we would have used a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So we should decrease that. I'm hoping that it works out right. So I'm just going to choose something that's like slightly bigger than 1/4 inch, but narrower than 3/8. and we'll see how it works, I guess. I didn't mathematically figure out if that part would match up right. All right, so normally I would sew that portion on and then add this. With it being vinyl, I don't want to stitch over it too many more times than necessary because you can perforate the vinyl. So I'm just going to clip on the lining main panel and the exterior and everything, do this all in one step. So we need to start stitching 1/2 inch from the end. Go ahead and measure to mark the 1/2 inch mark. And although your seam allowance here will be slightly less than 1/2 inch, I'm still just going to use a full 1/2 inch. All right, so we want to start and stop stitching at that point. My stitch length is still set at a 3. So I'm going to just make sure that you have your exterior lining and zipper all properly lined up here. Since you have all 3, it's nice to have the zipper already attached to the exterior just so it doesn't slide around, but just take your time and make sure that everything is lined up. And again, I'm using slightly less than a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So I love the way a bag looks when you sew it in all vinyl. There's, you know, a few more challenges, I guess, things that you need to do different. Some vinyls are pretty sticky, and you might want to use like a Teflon foot for that, or there's a walking foot if you have a domestic machine, or I think some people will put Scotch tape on the bottom of their foot. So this is my Teflon foot. It's made out of like a plastic, and the bottom of it is super smooth. So if you notice that your presser foot is sticking to the vinyl and grabbing when you're sewing, then you'll want to use a Teflon foot. And I just found that on Amazon. You'll want to search for a Teflon foot that works with your sewing machine. So, all right, and I just slid my zipper pulls out of the way. And then using, with the diamond strap anchors also already attached to the bag, it doesn't really present challenges, but they kind of are grabbing onto things down here. So just really take your time. All right, and then when I get to the other 1/2 inch mark, stop and back stitch. All right, so now we want to put these wrong sides together and then top stitch using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, starting and stopping 1/2 inch from the end again. So it's a little trickier with vinyl and waterproof canvas because you cannot iron this. So we want to make sure that our stitch length is set to 1/2 inch. And I'm just kind of finger pressing, I guess, both the lining and exterior away from the zipper. All right, so I'm going to mark my 1/2 inch mark. I don't think my chalk pencil likes to write on this vinyl, so I'm just going to mark it actually on the zipper, I think. If you do that, just make sure it's something that you can erase later. So I am actually going to go give this waterproof canvas portion a press with iron. All right, and hopefully that will help hold everything in place a little better. So now I'm just starting, and we'll see how this vinyl does with my regular presser foot first. Maybe I should actually, a good tip would be to test this out on a scrap. Let me get a scrap of vinyl. Alright, that actually sews very nicely with my regular foot. Didn't stick at all. It could be different if it was humid or different factors, but so yeah, definitely test it on a scrap first before you just start top stitching your bag. So I'm going right to that 1/2 inch mark, and I'm going to stitch a couple stitches and then back stitch just a few, and make sure you go in the same holes that you created with the first stitches, and do not go back further than that 1/2 inch mark. And I'm just making sure as I go to continually pull the lining down away from the zipper. And then right when I get to that 1/2 inch mark on the other side, I'll go ahead and back stitch a few stitches. All right, and now we'll repeat that process with the other exterior main panel and the other lining main panel. I guess while I clip this in place, I'll discuss with you cutting out the vinyl and the waterproof canvas. I just traced the pattern pieces onto the wrong side of both and then cut it out. This vinyl from So Weird comes in, I think there's different lengths. It's the width of fabric, so maybe 54. I did not check the length. I got a 12-inch roll, and I think there was an 18-inch roll also that I could have gotten. So I just, especially on the vinyl, I like to lay out my pattern pieces before I cut anything, because you have a limited amount to work with. And so many times before that I've just gone in and cut out my main panels, only to realize later that now I can't fit my handles or something else on there. So just definitely plan out how you're going to cut it. This is why my straps are going to have that facing on them, just because the 12-inch roll was like so close but not quite big enough for everything I needed. So the 18-inch rolls are really a good option for bag making, unless you're just doing accents or something. And then the 12-inch roll is a good option. All right, so I've marked my 1/2 inch marks on each end. And now I'm going to Just again, make sure to keep the zipper, the exterior, and the lining all lined up at the top. And I'm using slightly less than a half inch. No. Slightly less than 3/8, or yeah. So just over a 1/4 of an inch. And I want to switch back to my shorter stitch length. And do not stitch past that 1/2 inch mark. All right, and again, it's just with those diamond anchors attached, the back side of them is kind of grabbing onto some of the bumps and whatever in my sewing machine, so just keep an eye on that if you go fast and they're caught, and you'll be stitching over and over again in the same spot. And then when you come up on your zipper pull, stop with the needle in the down position. And just reach in and slide those out of the way. Just be careful not to pull them all the way off the end. You get to the other 1/2 inch mark, you'll stop sewing right at that mark and back stitch. All right, and now I'm going to again press this waterproof canvas side. All right, and then also pull the vinyl. So those are both wrong sides together now and pulled away from the zipper. I still have my 1/2 inch marks here from before, so I'm just going to transfer it to the other side of the zipper. Increase my stitch length to 4.5. Okay, so now I'm going to finger press this vinyl to kind of create a crease along the zipper. And then starting right at that 1/2 inch mark, I'm just stitching a few stitches and then back stitch. If you have never made this bag before, there are also videos that cover the whole process, cutting out, interfacing a regular bag, not just a vinyl bag that's, you know, printed smaller than it should be. So keep that in mind. Where this one I'm not going over everything, and I didn't include parts of it. And these are not the typical materials that I would use. So. Right now I'm just top stitching until I get to that other 1/2 inch mark. And I continually make sure that my waterproof canvas is pulled away from the zipper. It has a tendency to kind of creep back up. And then right when you get to that 1/2 inch mark, back stitch. Alright, trim my threads. That's noisy. All right, so everything looks good. Here's what we have so far. We are now on step 13. So this goes really fast when you don't interface. All right, so The side panels, this is the top half, I know because of the way I cut them out. You might want to mark which side's the top because the top and bottom look pretty similar. The bottom is a little bit more narrow. So you might want to use your whole 3/8 inch seam allowance along the zipper. This will be fine. Everything's fine. All right, so now I'm just pinning this side panel to the exterior and the zipper only. Right sides together. And I just realized that I forgot to cut out my lining side panels, so I'll have to do that. So now I'm going to change my stitch length back to a 3. And I'm going to use just shy of a 1/2 inch seam allowance here. Back stitch. And I'm sewing the zipper to the exterior. So right through the zipper, and just the lining is pulled back out of the way. Okay, with the lining panel still folded back out of the way, we're going to press that seam allowance down toward the lining panel and top stitch. Move my clips. Okay, so we're top stitching right now through the side panel and the main panel and the seam allowance and the zipper. The lining main panels are folded back out of the way. You can pin them back on themselves if you want to. And I increased the stitch or the seam allowance or stitch length to 4.5. I think you can do some all vinyl bags on a domestic machine. I think this vinyl I like better for an industrial. It's nice and sturdy. So, and I did make sure that my lining was still folded back out of the way. Okay. And then we'll repeat that same process on the other side. And I'm just kind of, since my 2 main panels came out a little bit wider, I'm just going to kind of center this. So I would definitely still use a 3/8 inch seam allowance when you sew the zipper in place. And again, I'm folding the lining panels back out of the way. Pinning the zipper and the exterior main panel sides to the side panel. Alright, and then I'm going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance again and a stitch length of 3 to sew that part together. Oh, this is actually just shy of 1/2 inch. You have to keep in mind whenever you print a pattern at a smaller percentage, it also decreases the seam allowances, so, which sometimes I think we don't think about that. All right, and again, we're pressing the side panel away from the main panels with the seam allowance pressed down toward the side panel, and make sure that the lining main panel ends are folded back away from the side panel. Stitch length is 4.5 again. I'm going to cut out my lining side panels real quick. Alright, my side panels now I will place, I marked the top, so that's the side that I match up to the main panels. And I'm clipping this in place, right sides together to the lining panels only. Alright, now we'll sew that using a 1/2 inch seam allowance again. Well, just shy of a 1/2 inch. Stitch length of 3. I stitched along the first part, and then there's an opening where the zipper is folded back. So I stop there and then resume sewing on the other side of that opening. Alright, if you're worried about bulk at all, you can trim some of these seam allowances down. I don't think it's necessary. Okay, so now we're going to press that seam allowance away from the zipper, wrong sides together with the exterior side panel. Okay, and now with that all pressed down, to close up that opening that's left on the inside, we are going to, again, using a longer 4.5 inch stitch length, 4.5 millimeter stitch length. I'm sewing over the previous stitching beneath the zipper, through all the layers, just beneath the zipper though. You don't want to sew all the way to the ends. We need the ends to be detached. So, and that's through the exterior, through the seam allowances, and through the lining. And then I just back stitch a couple stitches. And then that closes up the hole that's left on the inside, since the lining panels are not attached to the zipper. So just like that. And actually I'm not even gonna top stitch that. Alright, and then repeat that again for this side. Right sides together. And you can honestly even sew where I stopped in the middle, and then picked up sewing again on the other side of the gap by the zipper. You can just sew straight across there. That stitching is really not going to show. You can kind of see it, I think, at the end of the zipper. So just shy of a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Stitch length 3. pulling that lining side panel, wrong sides together with the exterior side panel. The seam allowance is pressed down, and then again I'm just going to top stitch through all the layers over the end of the zipper only, directly over our previous stitching. Now I'll trim some of these threads. Alright, so we are now on to, well, step 15 already. So we're going to match the sides. This is easier to sew. What do I do? The lining first. Alright, so make sure that your lining zipper pocket is out of the way when you do these steps. Oh, it's so noisy with all that hardware and those giant zipper pulls. So I'm going to start right here at the bottom, and I'm just matching the side panel up to the lining main panels, right sides together. And I'm just going to put a few clips going up the side. Alright, and then pulling the exterior back out of the way as best I can. I'm going to bring the lining panels wrong sides or right sides together, matching the point and those seam lines. Just pin around the curve there. Pins may be helpful for holding this. Having the vinyl on there is a little more challenging because it is kind of pulling back more than, you know, fabric would. Alright, stitch length is 3. Let's see. So I have you use a 5/8 inch seam allowance on the lining. And that just helps it to fit tighter. So what I do is start at the line that I marked at the top, and I'm just to the inside of it for the lining because I want it to be larger, slightly larger seam allowance. I'm making sure that my zipper pocket panel is pulled back out of the way. You don't want to sew through that right now. And I'm just making sure that these panels are staying lined up properly as I pull the clips off of it. And always, if you do any adjusting, make sure that your needle is in the down position. Alright, so slightly less than a 5/8 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to actually trim these seam allowances down as I go. So I trim them to between 1/4 and 1/8 of an inch. Ooh. That one was close. Can't see this black thread on this dark purple very well. Okay. So I just want to do all 4 of the lining seams first. This might be easier actually too if you unzip your zipper. So I'm just bringing at the top of the marked seam lines. So at the top of that point, bring this right sides together and clip. And then again, and then just work my way down the side. It helps to do a couple on the top and then a couple on the bottom, and then work your way to the middle. Okay. And remember, we're using on the lining a little bit bigger seam allowance, so I'm using just under 5/8. So when you get to the marked seam line, you'll sew just inside of it. And that just helps the lining to fit snugly inside the exterior so that it isn't baggy. Trim the seam allowance down as well. And you don't have to interface anything. This bag really comes together fast. Also making sure that the zipper along the top is pulled back so that you don't get it caught in the seam. Oh, and someone commented once about the trains. I do live near the train tracks. So, railroad tracks, whatever. Can't do anything about that. Well, I'm a couple blocks away really, but it's still pretty loud. Alright, and now from, again, slightly less than a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Make sure that your interior zipper pocket panels are folded back away from where you're sewing. And always adjust with your needle in the down position. Alright, last lining one. point, I don't think you can probably see much of what's going on here. And now we're going to repeat that whole process on the exterior panels. So, and I think it's a good idea at this point to go ahead and unzip all of our zippers. So I already have the main zipper unzipped, and I'm just going to also unzip the interior zipper pocket. Alright, so we want to match the exterior seams, right sides together, the side panels matching to the main panels. And I just kind of, that part where it was a little bit wider because of me adjusting the seam allowance along the zipper, just kind of go with it, just overlook it. You could trim it to be even if you want. I just kind of, it's not that big of a difference. So here we're going to sew directly along that seam at the top, and then continue down using just under 1/2 inch seam allowance. Make sure to always back stitch at the top. So it's been a long time. I haven't sewn, okay, I guess when I sew bags now, I'm sewing them for my patterns, so I tend to stick to whatever materials I call for in the pattern. I don't like to change it up much. And I used to sew a lot more, you know, like all vinyl bags or have embroidery designs on them. Or so would you guys like to see me sew, you know, do videos for bags using other materials than what my patterns call for? Because this is fun. I haven't sewn a vinyl bag in a long time. I'm enjoying myself. And that's important too, that sewing still is fun. And I'm pretty sure this bag is going to be like really awesome when it's done, so I'm excited. You know what? So I always like to put my clips on the direction I'll be sewing. Like whichever side will be on the bottom when I sew is the straight, clear side of the clip, because it glides along the sewing machine bed easier that way. So if you ever notice me flipping my clips over, that's why. Oh, you know, I actually do have, let me know if you want to see this. I need to make one of my on a break, funny that I can't remember the names of my own patterns, right? On a Break is a crossbody, so it's not that. I need to make my bowler bag. Oh, I'm awful. Either way, I need to make it out of cork and leather, and also these same diamond strap anchors. So, and I was going to decrease my seam allowance, or decrease the size of the pattern for that to 90%, because, well, it's for my mom and she wants it to be a little bit smaller, and I had made myself one that size and she liked it. And I've been promising this bag to her for over a year now. So maybe I should actually get that done soon. Guess it would be a late present, Christmas present at this point, since Christmas is coming up, but How You Doing? That's the name of my bowler bag pattern. So the How You Doing in 90% with leather accents, leather handles, cork mane, and then waterproof canvas lining. So let me know if you want to see that bag on a video also. And I have no problem making a video for that. And my mom would finally get her bag. So if you want my mom to get her bag. And that one has a drop-in lining, so, and I prefer it to be that way. So if you want to see a video, you know, of a drop-in lining bag, maybe it'll make the process easier for you. So just let me know. And I think I still used, yeah, I'll still use foam for that. Foam, cork, leather, waterproof canvas for the lining. I'm just throwing a couple more stitches at the top of that. I didn't get all the way to the edge. All right. So now, again, make sure both of your zippers are unzipped. We are going to use the pattern piece. Or not. Where is it? There. Okay. Use the bottom panel pattern piece to find and mark the center. So I already have the centers of the long sides marked. So I just fold my pattern piece in half to find the center of that. And I'm making these marks on the wrong side. So this is the lining. All right, and then on the exterior, same thing. I already marked the center of the long sides when I cut it. Or well, I guess when I traced it to cut out. All right, so we're going to start with the lining. And you can just kind of fold your entire exterior out of the way. I feel like the lining is harder to sew, so I prefer to do it first. Alright, so it's going to be kind of a crinkly mess. So I'm just matching up the center of the main panels, and I already have those centers marked from when I cut it out. The center of the exterior main panel or lining main panel and the lining side panels. Those centers were already marked. If you don't have them marked, you would want to mark them before trying to do this part, especially with everything kind of crinkled up. The exterior being vinyl is keeping the lining from like laying smoothly at all. So vinyl definitely does present a couple challenges that, you know, regular cotton fabric would not, but the result's such a professional product. Alright, and then I'm lining up the centers of the short ends with the center mark on the side panels. So first I just put a few clips along each of the straight edges, and then the corners should just kind of fall into place. And even printing at a smaller percentage, the bottom panel fits in there nicely. Oops. I think some people like to staple their bottom panels in, and that's fine too. That's not something I've ever done. I don't know why. I guess I just don't have much of a problem doing them without, so it never occurred to me to do it, I guess. But if you staple it, then your clips aren't falling off and things like that. So if that's what you prefer or something that you want to check out, I'm sure there's other videos or tutorials about stapling it, but I think pretty much you just staple it within the seam allowance, and then when you trim the seam allowance down at the end, you trim the staples off so that way they aren't in your bag. Alright, so now that that's all the way clipped all the way around, I'm just going to sew this together using just under 5/8. I'm just going to go with an even 1/2 inch. And you want to make sure that your lining pocket panel, interior zipper pocket panel, is folded back out of the way. And I got my threads wrapped around my foot. You know, I thought before I started this, I should make my handles first. So that way they're done and we don't have to get done and still make the handles, and I didn't do it anyway. So much for that. I hate making handles, and sometimes my bags will sit with no handle, or I never close the interior zipper pocket after I turn the bag right sides out. Right now I'm using an Ugly Naked Guy bag that I made before the pattern. It's even slightly different than the final pattern, and the interior zipper pocket on that bag is open. There's no zipper tab, and I'm carrying it. So when I first started carrying it, I went to put something in the zipper pocket and it just fell right through. So it's funny that you get done sewing a whole bag and you just have one little line to sew, and I just never did it. So I like to put my left hand inside the bags as I sew if I can, to help guide everything. Going to go ahead and trim this seam allowance down right now. It's kind of nice to trim them as I go, and then that way when I get done I don't have to trim everything. And again, I'm just trimming it to about between 1/4 and 1/8. Now, we'll do the same thing with the exterior, except that it's a little easier because it stays shaped. Alright, so I'm just lining up the side seams, or I guess front and back centers. And the exterior main panel, I still fused the firm stabilizer to that, and I just fused it from the wrong side. So I feel like in my experience, most vinyls that I've used, I've still been able to fuse them from the wrong side. You don't want to touch the vinyl to the right, or touch the iron to the right side of the vinyl, because it will melt. And definitely always test it out on a piece of a scrap or something first, to make sure that it will be okay. But I have definitely ironed onto the wrong side of probably all the vinyl I've ever used, and it's been okay. So definitely try it first. Some of them might not be okay, but so yeah, if you don't want to iron onto the wrong side of your vinyl, then you can attach the bottom panel stabilizer with glue, or you could use double-sided tape, but that's not going to hold permanently. So I would use like a sewing glue. I can't remember the brand I used to buy. Literally don't have any right now, or I would remember. And then we're going to use some of our double-sided tape to make our handles, so. Alright, now we're just going to sew using slightly less than a, let me see, I want to use my zipper foot. So my zipper foot is like this, so it's completely flat on one side. The needle goes right through this cutaway. So it works really good for sewing on base panels because I can get right up to the stabilizer. My sewing machine is a Juki 8700, Juki DDL 8700. It says it's for garment sewing and lightweight, but it does pretty good with vinyl, so it's worked for me. I've had it for quite a few years now. I mean, I'm not opposed to upgrading, and I actually probably will this year to like a walking foot industrial machine, but this machine has done well. And I'm sewing this base panel with just under a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And you should be able to just sew right around the base panel stabilizer. Again, make sure you stop with your needle in the down position when you go around your corners, whenever you adjust it. It works nicely to just kind of pick the bag up and follow the curves on the end. And that is one thing that I do love about having my industrial machine, is that the end of it is flat. So nothing is really extending past that side, and it definitely makes bag making easier. I would say it's not a requirement for making bags, and I did make bags on my brother sewing machine for years and years, but it definitely makes it easier. So I wouldn't jump right into it when you want to sew your first bag, but once you know you like bag making and it's something that you want to continue doing, then it is definitely a good investment. One inside through the bottom, or the bottom of the interior zipper pocket. And I'm making sure that the seam allowances for my side panels are all facing toward the side panel. I don't know if that makes a difference in the way anything lays, but personal preference, that I like them all to be facing the side panels. Alright, and when you get back to where you began stitching, just back stitch. now we're going to trim this seam allowance. This vinyl is really pretty easy to cut. It's been easy to sew. I mean, for a vinyl. And it's also sturdy though, so I like that. It's not hurting my hand to cut it. And this is my first time using any of the vinyl from Sew Whatever, or nope, sorry, Sew Weird. I use a lot of other fabrics though. Alright, so I'm going to turn this right side out through this opening in the bottom of the interior zipper pocket, which is probably going to be challenging and noisy. And I might move the whole bag over to my lap and you might not see me do this. So I'm going to. Alright, so this is turned right side out, and I'm just making sure to push all of the seams out from inside. Alright, I'm going to push everything down inside, including my interior zipper pocket for right now, and I'll either close it up later or leave it open forever. And I'm just pressing the entire lining down inside. And then I will iron this from the lining side. I have a smaller iron that fits down inside bags nicely. Alright, so that was not easy to turn, but our exterior is finished other than pressing it from the wrong side. I think the vinyl is pretty sturdy on its own without adding any extra interfacing, and I do have that strip here to help with the handle connectors. So let's make our handles, and then the bag is done. Alright, so I'm making my straps with the same vinyl as the bag on the exterior, and the white glitter vinyl that I used on my appliques will be on the other side. So what I've done is cut the straps 2 inches wide by 15 inches long. And I'm just running some double-sided tape down both sides of a line. I drew down the center of the wrong side, down each of the handle pieces. The contrast pieces that I made for the handles, I cut just shy of 2 inches. Like, not even a whole 1/8 of an inch less, but just barely, just so that it's not wider than the exterior fabric or vinyl. And I find that when I'm working with vinyl, leather, cork, any of those materials, that it's very helpful to have double-sided tape. I buy double-sided leather tape from Wawac. I'm pretty sure I always say that wrong. So now we'll just pull off the paper backing and then press, I like to start in the center, press the raw edge into the center line that you marked. And this is to make 1 inch wide handles, which is the correct size for the Emmeline Bags diamond strap connectors. strap anchors, they might be called actually. All right, and then we're going to do this on all 4 of the strap pieces. All right, so let's go ahead and do one of the other ones so that we can put one together. I think when I sew this, I'll put white thread in my bobbin and then the black thread in the top, so that I don't have black top stitching on my white vinyl, because that's not my favorite. And if you're using a thinner vinyl, this glitter vinyl is a little bit thinner, so if I was using this for the whole bag, I would probably put some interfacing inside of this still. And I don't honestly know where I got this, so I've had it for a while. Some of the other vinyl that I got that I used for the appliques on the bag, I got from So Hungry Hippie. She has some awesome vinyl too. There's really a lot of great resources. All right, once that's all pressed down nicely, then I'm going to revisit my double-sided tape and run this all the way down the center of the wrong side of, I guess my facing piece is what I would call this. All right, and then I want to line it up centered on the wrong side. So matching up the centers, and then I'm just going to go down the length of the vinyl, making sure that it stays even. All right, I'm going to trim back one of them. If you have strap ends, there's like little metal ends that you can clamp on over the ends of your strap. Those are really nice for vinyl straps, so that you don't have raw edges exposed. I'm going to go ahead and sew this one right now. So I'm going to put white in my bobbin, black in my top thread, switch back to my narrow presser foot, and then I'm just going to use a 1/8 inch seam allowance. I'll backstitch a few stitches at the beginning. And I increased my stitch length to 4.5. down the other side of the strap as well. Now actually before I finish the other strap, I'm going to see if this is the right length that I want. I was kind of winging it. Oh yeah, that looks perfect. And that was 15 inches long. So those straps will be really a nice length. And then I'm just going to attach those probably with rivets. So we'll finish this strap. You know, I want to kick myself when I pull the paper backing off both strips of the tape at one time. I don't know why I do that. You know, it's funny actually to think about that. Rivets is also not something I use that often, since I'm typically trying to sew my bags exactly according to the pattern and not add anything else. So, and I like to make my bags kind of bare bones. I don't know what else to call it, so that you can add things to it. So like for the Tribbiani, for example, I used webbing and plain wax canvas for the exterior, and it just gives you a clean base that you can then use to make it into a handbag if you want, instead of a duffel or traveler bag. Add hardware connector, add pockets, add embroidery. Kind of make it your own. All right, last one. All right, now I'm just going to top stitch each side of this strap handle. So we are actually done sewing. Oh, I have to sew that pocket closed. I don't know if anybody needs to see that, or I guess I better actually just do it or else I won't. So let me go ahead and change my bobbin thread back to black. Okay, and I'm back on my shorter stitch length. Pull this handle back off of here for now. Alright, so I'm just going to pull the whole pocket out, and then I'm folding the raw edges in by about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. If this was not waterproof canvas, I would iron it in place, but it's really not going to stay. I'm just going to, I'll fold each side separately, put a few clips on it, and then put them both together. So I'm just now matching the folded bottom edges up with each other. Oops. Alright, and then we'll just top stitch that closed. You can use an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, or just kind of as small as you can get it, as close to the edge as you can get. Or you can hand stitch it closed if you really prefer that, which I do not. Well, not that I don't prefer the way it's looked. I'm sure it looks fine. I don't prefer to do any hand sewing, so. I'm just tucking that zipper pocket down inside now. Alright, press the whole lining down in there. I'll do a final iron afterwards, unfortunately not in the video. Alright, so if we go ahead and attach the strap connector, or the handles now. Alright, so I have my rivet press here, which is from Gold Star Tool. I don't know much about that company. I have not had any problems with my rivet press. So I have just a Sharpie. I'm going to measure 1/2 inch from the raw edge on each of the handles and centered. And then 2 inches. I think that's where I like to measure. Let me see. If I have that mark be kind of wet. Okay. How about we'll mark it 1/2 inch and then 1 3/4 of an inch centered on the wrong side of each end of each handle. Alright, and then I have my leather punch, which I use on, let's see, not the smallest hole, but the second to the smallest. And I think my rivets are 9mm. So I'm just going to punch a hole. And I actually, I got my rivets from Gold Star Tool also. When I bought my rivet press, I just bought a bunch of rivets that fit it because I knew I'd forget which size they were, and then I would not get rivets that fit in the dies that I have. This is a leather hole punch that I think I got from Tandy Leather. You can buy them on Amazon. You can buy punches that go in your rivet press also. But and then unless you have more than one press, you have to change the die out. So I'm fine with this. I'm just turning it after I cut it to make sure it cuts all the way through. Alright, so then I have my rivets. I need 4 with a post and then 4 caps. Alright, and then I will take this, take the handle through one of the connectors. I'm putting the post through the front. These actually might be 10mm rivets. And you actually might want to make those marks at 1/2 inch and 2 inches because this is kind of close to the hardware. And then I'm just going to line the rivet up in my press. And press that down. Alright, and then repeat that for the other 3 handle connectors. Or strap anchors or whatever they're called. And then after I'm all done, I'm going to use my tweezers to pull all of this plastic away. It's not my favorite part, but I think the tweezers should help. I think the last time I used a craft knife to try to cut it away, and I scratched my connectors all up, so. And I think if I was making this bag a bigger size with just vinyl, I would more than likely use a foam interfacing, but I think for this small size that it's fine uninterfaced. Alright, all of my rivets are attached. So all I have to do now is press my bag from the lining side and remove the plastic. And it's done. And I'll include some pictures of the final bag also in the video. So I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if it was helpful, and if you want to see more videos like this, making my patterns from alternate materials than what the pattern calls for. Thanks for watching.